Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute game changer of a framework for learning and development professionals. We're looking at Guy W. Wallace's The Golden Path to Performance Improvement Consulting. Now, if you're in L&D, you totally know the drill, right? A business leader comes to you with some problem, and boom, they immediately ask you to build a training course to fix it. But what if training isn't the answer at all? Today, we're going to fundamentally shift our mindset from being reactive order takers to becoming proactive, highly valued performance consultants.
You know, the late, great L&D pioneer Joe Harless wrote about a really classic, highly relatable demand from a stakeholder. He called it the Gimme Widget Appreciating Course. I mean, how many times have you heard a variation of this? Like, hey, develop a 2-day course to motivate our people. Or, can you build an e-learning module on our new core values? It perfectly illustrates the trap L&D professionals fall into constantly. The stakeholder has already diagnosed the problem, they've prescribed the solution, and they just expect you to take the order and build the whole shebang.
But hold on a second. Before you spend weeks storyboarding, designing, and developing a shiny new learning module, you really have to ask a crucial Socratic challenge. Are you sure it's a knowledge and skill deficit? Is it actually possible that the business problem they're facing has absolutely nothing to do with what the employees know or what they can do? We have to immediately start questioning whether every single organizational hiccup can actually be solved with a new training course. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the order taker trap, move into the mindset of the performance consultant, unpack the EPP fishbone framework, explore performance and gap analysis, and finally arrive at the L&D pivot point.
All right, part 1, the order taker trap.
So the very first major hurdle we have to overcome in L&D is the danger of blindly accepting training requests without understanding the real business problem. Think about the L&D order taker. Their default response to literally any problem is, yes, we can build a course for that. But on the flip side, we have the performance improvement consultants. Their default response is, let's diagnose the root cause first. The consultant realizes that if the root cause isn't actually a lack of knowledge, then training will literally do nothing to solve the problem.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, I can't just tell my stakeholders no when they ask for a course. And you know what? You absolutely shouldn't. Pushing back directly just makes you look unsupportive. Instead, use what Guy Wallace calls sneaky trick 62. You agree to help, sure, but you ask a very specific question. What would authentic practice look like, with reinforcing and corrective feedback? By asking this, you're not pushing back on the client at all. Instead, you instantly force them to ground their vague request into actual observable workplace performance. You shift the whole conversation from learning objectives to business outcomes.
Which brings us to part 2, enter the performance consultant. Once you've successfully shifted the conversation toward authentic workplace performance, you need a solid methodology to guide your diagnosis. Enter EPP, Enterprise Process Performance Improvement. This framework focuses strictly on measured results in performance competence across people, processes, organizations, and the value chain. It completely shatters the illusion that human knowledge and skills are the only levers we can pull to fix a business problem. It really forces us to look at the enterprise as a complete, interconnected system. And hey, to be a true consultant, you've got to speak the language of the C-suite, right? That means understanding CONC, or the cost of nonconformance. Basically, this is the estimated cost of the problem, the literal financial cost to the business of doing nothing at all and just letting the problem persist. By calculating the CONC, you establish the return in your ROI. You allow leadership to weigh the actual hard financial weight of the problem against the cost of whatever intervention you end up proposing.
All right, moving on to part 3. The EPP fishbone framework.
Now we're going to break down the 12 actual variables of performance that you absolutely must assess before building any instruction. And what's really fascinating here is that these first 6 factors, they have completely nothing to do with the human worker's brain. These are environmental enablers: data, materials, tools, facilities, budget, and culture. These 6 non-human factors are so often the hidden culprits behind workplace failures. Think about it. If a worker doesn't have the right budget, or their tools are broken, or the company culture actively punishes the correct behavior, no amount of e-learning is ever going to fix their performance. Now, contrast those environmental factors with the human enablers. We have knowledge and skills, yes, but we also have physical, psychological, and intellectual attributes right alongside personal values. I really want you to notice something here. Knowledge and skills is just one single variable out of the 12 total variables of enterprise performance we've just seen. 1 out of 12.
If you only ever build training courses, you are only ever treating 1 out of 12 possible causes of a business problem. That's a real eye-opener.
So let's get into part 4, performance and gap analysis.
How do we actually figure out which of those 12 variables is the real culprit? Well, we run a diagnostic phase. Basically, in a facilitated group process with your master performers, you map out 3 things. First, you define the ideal performance, the exact outputs, measures, and tasks required. Next, you list the typical gaps, like where are average performers failing to meet that ideal. And finally, you identify the probable causes using those 12 variables we just learned about. This clear side-by-side alignment directly links a worker's daily struggle to its true root cause, whether it turns out to be a broken process, a bad environment, or an actual skill gap. But there is a massive catch when you're interviewing your master performers to build out that analysis. Check out this number, 70%. Research actually shows that a staggering 70% of a master performer's decision-making knowledge is totally non-conscious. It has just become automatic to them. This is tacit knowledge. It means they physically cannot easily explain to you how they make complex decisions in a basic interview. They will accidentally leave out 70% of what a novice actually needs to know. Crazy, right? So to uncover that hidden 70%, we use what's called the 3 Ds of thought flow analysis. We're essentially mapping out the covert cognitive tasks happening right behind the overt behavioral tasks. Step 1 is discriminations. How does the expert notice variances in their environment? Step 2, determinations. How do they actually come up with viable alternatives or workarounds? And step 3, decisions. How do they ultimately choose between plan A and plan B? Documenting this hidden thought flow is exactly what separates basic, kind of ineffective training from truly high-impact performance guidance. And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, the L&D pivot point. Okay, so you've gathered all your gap analysis data, you understand the true costs, and now you are facing the moment of truth, the pivot trigger. This triggers when your gap data clearly proves to the project steering team that a lack of knowledge or skill is simply not the root cause of their problem. Let's say your data shows that 3 out of 4 performance gaps are caused by bad software tools and contradictory management policies. This is the exact moment the performance consultant truly shines. You use hard, undeniable data to prove that an L&D course just won't fix a broken environmental process. So in this gate review meeting, you actually present the steering team with 4 very clear options. 1, kill the project entirely because training just makes no business sense here. 2, modify the approach. Maybe you pivot to fix the tools or the culture instead of building a course. 3, defer the effort until those environmental barriers are removed. Or 4, approve the proposed effort, but only if knowledge and skills truly are the missing link. By laying out these options, you empower stakeholders to make a real, data-backed business decision to pivot to a non-instructional solution when it's necessary. I want to leave you with a pretty provocative final thought today. Just because you can build instruction, does it really mean you should? I want to challenge you to apply this performance consultant mindset to your very next project request. Before you immediately default to building a course, just stop. Clarify the authentic practice, investigate the 12 variables of the EPP fishbone, and let the gap data tell you what the business actually needs. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.